think I need to explain to you who Enoch and Ayli am. Down at Upton the other week, I had to try and explain it to them. And I don't think half of them understood what I'm talking about. I don't know. What's wrong with them? Anyway, yeah. Well, Enoch and Ayli, the wives, they never had any names, you know, it was all Ayli's missus, you know. So we're not going to break with tradition. The two good ladies, one morning we were having a cup of tea in Enoch's kitchen, and they were discussing the Intrepid Fair. And Enoch's wife said, "Enoch's as soft as a bottle of pop." And Ayli's missus said, "Well, Ayli's as daft as a brush." And then they started trying to make out which one of them was the most gullible. And anyway, that afternoon, they decided to prove which one was the most gullible. So that afternoon, when Enoch come home from work, he walked in the kitchen and he sniffed. Couldn't smell nothing cooking. He up me went, she said, "What's for tea?" I said, "Bread and dripping." He said, "Bread and dripping? You've got to be joking. I'm a working man. I want mate and taters, me. I'll go to work, I'll bring me money." What? I said, "Well, that's all there is." He says, "In that case, I'm going down the pub, I'm going to have maybe one of them big mate pies and a couple of pints of beer." And he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. A couple of minutes later, he was back. He says, "Anyway," he says, "couldn't lend me a few bob, could you?" I said, "No." I says, "I got no money." He says, "You got no money?" He says, "What's going on here? I want to get to the bottom of this." You know, he said, "I bring me money home every week." He says, "You've got no food in the house and you've got no money. What's going on?" I says, "Well, it's like this. I was on my way back this afternoon." I says, "I come across this poor chap. He'd been set up on by robbers. Knocked him about terrible there." I said, "I brought him home and I did a bit of first aid on him and cleaned him up. And he told me his story. Now, he was a tailor from London, down in Savile Row. And he'd come up here to the Midlands to pick up a bolt of cloth to make a suit for one of them royals." Did I tell you which one it was? Well, I've got a good idea. Anyway, I give him all our money so he could get himself back down to London, you know, to go about his business. But in return, he's given me a few yards of that cloth, just enough to make you a new suit. I said, "Here, look at it." And I held her arms out like that. And then I looked, it's a bit strange. I said, "Oh, hang on. I've heard a story like this. What was it? The Emperor's new clothes. How did it go?" Oh, if you couldn't see him, you was a fool." "What did they like?" He said, "Oh, it's all right, like." He says, "I can't remember the end of that story now." And anyway, that I cleared the table off. I got the sewing machine out and I started cutting, snipping and working away there. And he kept looking and he kept thinking, "Oh, I wish I could remember the end of that story." Well, he had a bit of bread and dripping and took himself off to bed. Next morning when he got up, they're still going at it. You know, and he thought, "I don't know." He said, "I've tried all night to remember the end of that story. I can't remember it." But anyway, off he went to work. And meanwhile, round at Ayli's house, he woke up that morning and his wife was sitting aside the bed, was crying and wringing her hands, you know. And he says, "What's up, me wench?" I says, "It's you." He said, "Me?" He said, "What have I done?" I says, "You've died in the night." He says, "I'm dead." He says, "Oh." He said, "Well, I don't know." And I started crying again. He says, "Look, calm yourself down. I'll go and make a drop of tea." I said, "No, you go." I says, "I'm dead." I said, "You've got to stop him. The Undertaker's on his way." Oh, well, I knew that. Anyway, Enoch come home that afternoon. And he walked in, and just as he walked in, his missus says, "I've just finished that suit." I said, "I'm just in time." And I've got a coat hanger in, you know. So what you think? Wish I could remember the end of that story. Anyway, I says, "Come on, so I can get them old working clothes off." He got his clothes off. I said, "Here," and I offered him the trousers. And You know. He had a bit of a job doing the flyers up, you know. I says, how do they feel? He says, well, uncomfortable. He says, oh, I don't know, I've got them on. So anyhow, then he says, come on, he says, let's have the waist. Helped him on with the waist, helped him out there, did all the buttons on his waist. On with the jacket. Smoothed it out, picked a bit of lint off, you know. Looks all right. He says, how is it? He says, it don't feel right. I said, I says, it's the cap. I've got his cap, I chopped him in the corner and says, I made you a new cap out of the same material. And I placed it on his head at that jaunty angle that he always used to wear it. And I stepped back. And I said, hey, Enoch, he says, you do look a dandy. I said, I see why I married you now. He says, how do you? I said, a shame about Ayli, though. Ayli? What's wrong with Ayli? Oh, say a word. He died. I said, Ayli's dead. He says, oh, well, no. I says, why don't you go round while you got your new suit on and pay, you know, last respects to him? So he went round to Ayli's house and knocked on the door. Ayli's missus come and took him into the parlour with the coffin. He looked in the coffin, there's Ayli. And Ayli says, all right, Enoch. He says, all right, Enoch, you ninny homer. He says, I thought you were supposed to be dead. He says, I am. He says, all right. He says, if you're dead, he says, how come you can talk? He says, I did wonder about that. Well, I've never been dead before, have I? You know. He says, anyway, calling me a ninny homer, it's yours the ninny homer. Since when have you been walking around with no clothes on? That's what do you mean? I got my new suit on. Oh, he says, you got your new suit on. Let's see you stuck your fingers in your waistcoat pocket like you do when you're watching out for your pigeons. Well, they had to agree. There was a pair of ninny homers. But it did prove which one of them was the most gullible, did it? And I thought I'd ask you all up tonight. But I ain't too sure now. I mean, it's Friday night. Have you got nothing better to do than sit around here listen to me tell a sad story?